So the next step in this process is to attach the screens to the bottom of the shelves. So I've completed one here. This is the top of the shelf, and I affixed the screen to the bottom of the shelf. So this way the lights will sit on top of here, and once the legs are attached here, the tubs will slide in underneath here. Now I did something a little bit different than what other people do. I added this centerpiece just to allow more stapling to the bottom here, so it will hold more weight in there and not pull the staples out. In order to do this, we're going to need a few tools. You're going to need screening, obviously. And what I'm using for this is I'm using this 2-foot by 25-foot, 23 gauge galvanized 1/4 inch square mesh. So the little squares in here are 1/4 inch. I forget what this costs. Now these frames for myself are 25 wide by about 37. So the 2-foot works fine. As you can see here, I can just take the 2 feet, spread it out, and it'll cover each individual shelf. I don't need to do the whole 37 inches. They'll come in a little bit, just try to center it in there, and it will work fine. I'm doing 6 of these, so 6 times 3 foot each is about 18 feet total. I got 25 feet, so I'll have plenty of extra if I need to do some cutting. Now to cut this, there's a few tools that you'll need to cut the wire. I found that anything with a cutting edge, like these pliers, trying to get into that mesh with these top parts aren't going to work, right? That's not going to work. Using snips like this, when you try to cut that screen material, these are curved, and it will actually cause the screen to bend a little bit when you do it. Little tools like these to cut the wires work well. The only problem with that is, you can do it. You're just going to be there for a little while, cutting each square all the way down. What I found works best is, and these are just tools I had laying around, these straight snips work really well to cut them, and I'll demonstrate that when I do the next one. Now, to attach the staples, you can use any type of stapler. I happen to have a DeWalt 18 gauge stapler, and the staples that I'm using for this are these are 3/4 inch long and with a 1/4 inch crown. And these worked fine for me to hold those. You can go with the more C style staples as well. They don't go in as deep. This thing worked well for me. The only challenge with using something like this is knowing where the staple's actually going to land. You have to play with it a little bit to figure out where the staple will go in for you. So I'm going to go ahead and get started and do one here. So the first thing I'll do is I'll roll this out for what I need. And right here I'm just kind of doing a rough estimate. On the sides I get about 4 squares in, so about 1 inch, and I'm doing about 1 inch on this side as well. So just kind of line it up so I get my 4 little squares on that side, 4 little squares on that side, and then I can see where it's going to be on this side. So you can see what I'm doing here is I'm lining up the scissors so that when I cut, it's going to cut off, not in the middle of those threads, but really on the end, so I'm not leaving any sharp pieces to them really. It'll leave a little bit of nubs. They'll be a little bit sharp, but it's also best to wear gloves when you're doing this because it is fairly sharp when you cut them. This is also not the easiest thing to do holding the camera. So as you can see, when I cut this, it'll leave one side fairly smooth, but it'll leave these nubs on the other side. Now what I found the easiest thing to do, trying to trim these little pieces off does not work very well. It actually just bends them instead of cuts them. So what I found is before I start the next piece, I'll actually come in a few rows and cut them there to leave this side smooth, and then pull it and repeat the process. So for now, I'm going to put the camera down and finish cutting this. Now I found once I cut this, it's easier to flip the screen over so the bow faces up in the middle. Just easier to handle that way. And the next thing I'm trying to do is just center it and keep it straight so that when I start stapling it, I'm not like totally crooked and off on one side. And then I'll start stapling on one end. Now, as you can see with the staple gun, I'm hitting right on the wire to hold it down. And again, it's kind of hard to see where the staple will go, and it's a really small staple in there. So I miss a few and I get them inside the squares instead of on a wire. But I'll go through here every couple inches to nail it down one side. And then I will go down one side this way. I'll go across the middle and continue until I get the whole thing done. Okay, you can see here, I didn't get it on perfectly straight, but that's okay. I mean, I'm just need to make sure that the edge is covered and that you have some in there. And also in places like this, it will kind of bubble up. And you have to be careful because that staple gun will break these like it did here, and you'll create that little bubble, which is fine. Tubs will still slide in and out fine. But that's pretty much it for attaching the screening. Now the one thing you want to do when you're done with this too is run your hand over this, because the animals may be able to rub up and touch the screen depending on how you're doing your enclosures. You want to make sure that there's no rough pieces. Now what I've done where some of these are misaligned or something else, what I've been able to do is, you know, just if I cut out a little square, an animal's not going to fit through there. I just want to make sure there's no sharp edges. So on my first one that I did, I noticed a few of those because you can see where the galvanized stuff is kind of bubbled up. It does could leave a sharp edge there. So just using your hand to run over it should be good enough. For this next step, we need to add some metal brackets to these tubs. These tubs, as you can see, are fairly flexible. They move a little bit. The corners are more stable just because of the amount of plastic that comes up in here, but these sides are fairly flexible. So as you can see here, I'm just laying this on top, and you can see the bow in the middle here. And what we're going to want to do is screw a piece of metal in to make that tighter. And that's going to make this more rigid, so when you slide it in and out of the rack, it's okay. Plus, it's going to add stability and make it much safer for your animal. So what we're going to do is, you can get these any size. Again, my tubs are 36 by 24. The actual inside dimension here is 34. So if you wanted to, I've got a 4-foot section here. You could cut down and buy these and cut it down to 34 inches. I decided to buy 4-foot ones and cut them directly in half because I think that would be enough. So I'm going to do that with just 2-foot sections. So to start with this, we're going to need a few tools. We're going to need something to cut this aluminum. And what this aluminum is it's just aluminum angle. This is 1/16 thick, 3/4 inch. So 3/4 inch is the side pieces here, each of the L's. So that's 3/4 inch, that's 3/4 inch, and this is 4 foot long. To cut that, I'm simply going to use a hacksaw. So you're going to need a tape measure to measure your 24 inches, a marker to mark it out, and then a hacksaw to cut it. Now to do the screws, to screw it in, you're going to need a drill bit. You're going to need a countersink. So here I've got a 3/8 inch countersink that I bought for this. I don't do a lot of metal work. Most of my work is woodwork. I wish I would have got the 1/2 inch instead of the 3/8 because I think it would have been a little bit better. And I got number 10 3/4-inch screws, and I'm putting 4 screws in each side. You'll also need a file and some sandpaper to sand down the metal after you're done cutting it to get rid of the sharp edges, as well as the holes once you drill for the screws. You'll want to soften those up as well. So to start this, I'm going to measure out 24 inches on my metal here. So I'm just putting a mark in the middle of where I want to cut that and cut that in half. Now my workbench and this hacksaw trying to do it on a table was a little rough, so I got a little piece of wood here to elevate it up just so that I had more space. And just slowly cut. The metal is very soft. This is real time, by the way, not sped up. And there we go, the pieces are cut. Now the thing with this is the factory edge that I didn't cut is, it's got a, I'm trying to slide my finger. This is very smooth, but my finger stops there because it's got a little raised edge because it's sharp. And then where you just cut is obviously sharp. So I found it easiest to just use a rasp or a file and do a few passes just to soften it up a little more. You can use your finger and feel. It's got a bite. The other side. It's got a little bit. I'm also going to do this side here. Now the other thing I'm going to do is, because of the way these sit in the tub, your animal is going to have access to one side of this, and you don't want them to rub their nose against there and hit it. So I'm going to round over this edge, round over this edge, as well as this edge. And to do that again, just a few quick passes. You can already see that it's taking shape there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just using, what is this, 220 grit, and now I'm just going to lightly sand over it. You can try and go back and forth, but what I found is your finger misses and that's sharp and you will cut your finger, so just one direction, just kind of shoot it off. And I'm going over the same spots that I did with the rasp, only with the sandpaper, just to smooth it out a little bit more. Now I did find when holding the sandpaper, I'm basically sanding with this part of my finger. So when I wrap it in there, so I can get that rounded edge on these by holding my finger that way. Now if you have any hand sander, that would work as well. I'm trying to do this with low tech. You can see that that's round. There's still a little sharp burr there. gone. And again, it's probably best to wear gloves to do this. And basically just keep feeling if you feel any sharp edges or sharp burrs. Like that's still sharp, so I'll just round over this edge a little more. And you want to round it over from all directions. There we go. That's good. Let's work on this edge. Okay. That's pretty much it. You just need to do that on both sides. I would also, this is kind of dinged up from the store. It's got a few burrs in here. So just sand them over. Again, just check to make sure that's smooth. If one side's better than another, you can always make sure your animal side has the nicer side. That will go inside. Okay. Now for me, I'm just trying to find the softest edge side that I want to put inside. I think it's that one. So I'll make sure that goes inside. Now these tubs, if you get the same type of tubs, they have these little divots in here, which is for added strength. What I don't want to do is put the bar so that it ends up on one of those where I miss for a screw. So I'm just using line of sight, figuring out where I want it the best. That looks good. And now I will mark where I want the screws to go in. And basically I'm going to follow the other side that I got over there. So to do that, take my marker, go in about 2 inches, make sure I'm not over a ridge, which I can see. I can kind of see where it's bowing out, where I want to put a screw. So I'm probably going to want to put a screw right in between both areas. So they're not evenly spaced. They don't have to be. That should provide enough strength. You can put more screws in, but I found 4 is adequate. So if I put screws where those black dots are and I push that in, looks good. So the next step is going to be drilling these. So I found it easier to put this against a piece of wood again, just to hold it down so that I could drill through the metal. And just go slow so the drill bit doesn't heat up and break on you. Keep your fingers away just in case that happens. Put a little force on, but not a whole lot. And I'm through. So I'm going to do that. The other ones. Now I've loaded my countersink and my drill. Get off some of this metal. Get the bar back on here. And I'm just going to put the point into the center of the hole and smooth these out. Now you don't want to go through this, so you want to stop and check every so often to make sure it looks good. And as you can see, you get this nice round effect. Now, unfortunately, the screws I have, and this is why I wish I would have purchased the 1/2 inch round over bit. The purpose of that is so that these screw heads sink down into there. Now this metal's pretty thin, so for me to do that, I'm not going to put it all the way through. I found just making a divot makes it a little bit easier, so this area right here of the screw will sink into that. Now the drill bit I use is a little bit small, but that's okay. This will still drill through there. I could drive that screw through there. But I'm going to go a little bit more on that and do the rest of them. So that countersink leaves them fairly smooth, but they do have a little bit of a ridge. Now this is going to top, so the animals will be on this side and not be that big of a deal. But I still want to smooth those out. And additionally, on the other side where the drill bit came through, those have a ridge. So I want to sand those out. Again, it just takes a few light passes. Check with your finger to see if it's smooth. Okay, all 4 on back are smooth. Quick pass on the top. And there we have it. Again, it's probably best to wear gloves for this so that you don't get a metal splinter. So next step on this is going to be just to align this up, push it in, and screw the screws in. Helps if you have the right drill though. Let's try this again. There we go. That's all it takes. Go. One more over here. And the final screw. Now these screws do go through the bottom, given the size that I have, but nothing's going to be on the bottom here. You don't want to use like a 2-inch screw to go all the way down past this, because this will sit on the rail to slide in and out of the rack. So you do want those screws to be able to not clear this plastic edge. And you can see the screws do sit a little proud, which is perfectly fine. Again, when we go to the weight of the tub is going to push down on the rail. So as long as we leave a gap from the top of the shelf to the tub. So if this shelf, and this is the way it will be, there'll be lights on top of here. And we'll put legs on this, and there'll be another wood rail under here. And that's really what the tub's going to sit on, is this bottom rail. So when we go to design the sides, we'll want to pick this up just a little bit so there's a gap so screws don't catch on the screen.